Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Client Side Chats. We have another special guest today. We have Matt Law. Hey, Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Good, good. And Matt is the manager of EHS strategy, correct, for Grainger?
That's right.
And you're out of Orlando, Florida, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sunny Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, I know we were talking today about the temperatures, and you guys are a little bit warmer than we are in California. So,
Just a little
but
bit.
that's yeah, just a slight bit. So that's pretty cool. So, Matt, today I know we're going to have kind of a very interesting conversation, and well, tell everybody what is it that you're up to, because I think they're going to find it fascinating and very helpful. The work that you do will be very helpful to the safety profession. Matt, please take it away.
Sure. So this is kind of a product of my Doctor of Public Health degree that I'm working on through Walden University. And I've proposed a doctoral study that I should be starting in the next quarter or so. And really what this pertains to is the hazard recognition, risk perceptions, and safety climate among immigrant workers in construction in the United States. And what this kind of stems from is at Grainger over the past year, we've been really focused on serious injuries and fatalities. And there's a lot of data that supports the reason that we would take that direction, right? Over the past couple of decades, there's been a dramatic decrease in the total recordable incidents within the United States, right? I think it's something like a 67% decrease. However, serious injuries and fatalities have only decreased by around 20%, which is kind of a crazy thing, right? Why have those flatlined when we've been able to manage everything else correctly? So we've been really focused on, what are the things that make that up, and what are the ways that we can measure that and really try to attack that. So out of that, I started looking at, from a public health perspective, what are the various populations that might be more affected within the workspace, when it comes to serious injuries and fatalities. And kind of from my experience with construction and working with different types of people, I started to focus on immigrant workers and look into that a little bit. And what I found really interesting as I was doing, sort of my initial literature review, was that not only is this an issue in the United States, it's a global issue. So globally, construction accounts for about 20% of all fatalities that occur in the workplace, and that's a lot. On top of that, in all these different countries around the world, immigrant workers that work in construction experience more fatalities and serious injuries than their native peers. So it's a significant issue, and there's a lot of disparities that exist. So, kind of my initial literature review around this has been kind of exploring what are those different risk factors that would make that population more susceptible. And part of it is education and training. In the occupational safety and health space, a lot of times when something happens, we always go to training, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the first response.
Well, and it's like, do you really understand this, right? And
Yeah,
certainly what you've explored is beyond that point. It's not just hey, you don't understand how I'm saying. I'm not speaking in your native tongue, so to speak, right?
right.
Uh,
And training is a big part. There was one study I read that kind of surveyed some of the smaller construction firms. And well, actually, they surveyed a bunch of construction firms, but what they found was in smaller construction firms, immigrant workers tend to not receive all the training that they should. And that's job specific training, that's state and federally required training, that's across the board, but that's definitely a disparity that exists among immigrant workers. So training is something, right? Other studies have also looked into age and education level, and of course the language barrier. And I think something else that plays into it is culture, and it's something that we don't really understand very well. We talk a lot about safety culture and organizational culture within the workplace, but that doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? There's cultural influences from outside that the different workers in that workplace bring with them. So part of my curiosity about exploring this study is understanding how those different kind of cultural influences might affect risk perceptions and safety outcomes and the overall safety climate within the organization.
that's fascinating. And I'm sure as you do the dig, you're going to find certain specifics or trends, if you will,
Hmm.
amongst the cultural issues, or that would present the cultural issues, where the gaps exist, and
Hmm.
those kinds of things, as well as other things that may come along that might be kind of surprising. Which I think, for everyone who is a safety professional out there, anyone who heck manages in a construction project or construction components, probably faces this. It's the big key is, what do we do about it? How do we
Right.
overcome that? How do we make sure we don't have these kinds of things, and we start carving that down so those kinds of injuries, those kinds of fatalities don't occur even amongst our immigrant workforce?
Yeah, I think I mean, of course we all know the trends with blaming the worker and,
Yeah.
for their behavior and
Yeah.
trying to correct the worker, to improve safety. And, I think over time what we've really found is that, it takes a systematic approach, an organizational approach to really manage safety outside of just what the worker does, or how they behave. We have to have the systems to support that, right?
Yeah.
But in order to build those systems, we have to be able to answer the questions, what is the actual problem here? And what are the things that influence this problem? And, can we address those risk factors? Which is why, I feel the public health perspective on occupational safety and health really plays into this, right? Because we're looking at this from a population standpoint, and we're looking at this from a systems thinking approach, right? What are all the things that play into this that cause these various outcomes?
That makes sense. I think, no, well, actually, I'll pose this to you. Granted, you're finding this out now. We're getting this kind of today, and I'm kind of using that concept loosely, meaning today, meaning the current, the present. How about as things shift as we move forward in the population? Because we know the way construction has gone, it changes over time.
Hmm.
And therefore, the types of people who come into and out of construction also tend to change. While we have longevity of families, you can find, people who have parents that worked in construction and they
Sure.
followed suit and all that. Doesn't necessarily mean they follow the same type of methodologies of this approach of
Hmm.
getting to the job, because the technologies and the way things are done change over time.
Yeah.
Or would you expect to see that there has been a variation in this over time? And I don't know if your doctoral
Hmm.
study will get into that aspect, but if that's the case, is that something we need to consider as we move forward as well?
I think that's a very good point. I think that is something that we would need to explore, is change over time, kind of a longitudinal study to see how things change, right? I know one thing that's changing is the workforce and the type of people that we have working in construction. And, sometimes we're seeing, well, in regards to immigrant workers, a lot of times we're seeing more immigrant workers come into those construction roles. And this is, an influx over time, right? And
Right.
why it's so important to address this issue now so that we can come up with good strategies for the future. Realistically, for this particular study, right now it's proposed as a qualitative study. So, hopefully what we'll do is really do some comprehensive interviews with some of these workers that are experiencing this day to day, and be able to pull some of those insights about their risk perceptions and how they perceive safety culture, and how they perceive their own culture and how it influences their work. So
Yeah.
this is very much a right here and now study, but from qualitative study, we can come up with the quantitative measures to be able to measure that kind of thing over time.
Matt, I tell you, I could definitely talk to you about this on and on and on, believe me. And I'm sure people who are watching this are like, yeah, this would be interesting. I'll tell you what, I'm interested to see what you find out as you go through this process. So you're
Yeah.
looking to get this completed, what, in about a year or so? Is that
I
correct?
hopefully it will be completed in a year. There's always things that come up, and getting good data and feel like we need to continue, then maybe it'll go longer. But I'm hoping within a year we'll be able to have something to present out that says, hey, this is what's going on. These are some of the answers to the questions that we have.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're comfortable, I would love to have you back on a year from now to see
Yeah.
and learn about some of these things. And if it's a lot of data, maybe we can even do a series to kind of present and share with the audience. I think that'd be great.
I think that'd be awesome.
Matt, thanks very much for your time. Always good to see you, sir.
You
And we'll
too.
be talking to you soon.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. Thanks.